Yes, women, it's all about living your healthiest life at any age. And here to talk more about that is Dr. Angela DeRosa, founder of DeRosa Medical. Nice to have you back on the show as always.
Great to
also
be here.
known as Dr. Hot Flash. We'll get to that in a moment. But we're talking about steps that women can take on a regular basis to incorporate into their lives to be healthy at any age, starting in their 20s.
Obviously, we should be talking to our teens about health, but the 20s are really important because it's kind of that foray into the rest of our life, and what we do then can certainly affect us later in life. But we really need to be talking about, first off, birth control at that point, STD testing, making sure we're getting HPV vaccines for the patients, because this way it can prevent cervical cancer down the road.
And when you're in your 20s and you're being presented with these different birth control options, the IUD is one of those options that they're told to consider. What should they know about them?
Well, there's all this bad press about IUDs, and it's not like your mother's IUD anymore. They're much lower doses of estrogen or progesterone, depending on the different types of IUDs, or there's even copper IUDs. But the ones now, they have very low doses of progesterone in them. They're much smaller, so there's less problems with, they had them impacting into the uterine wall and various other things. And they're actually better for you. And even ACOG, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, has suggested that it's the first line choice for women for birth control, because oral birth control pills affect your overall body, where the IUD just affects the local environment, which prevents pregnancy implantation. So your ovaries actually still function with an IUD, so you secrete all the normal hormones, estrogen, testosterone, and it's actually lower risk of STDs and the newer IUDs, and it's a better formulation, so you don't affect your overall hormonal health.
So if you're in your 20s, definitely you want to talk about those options at your Women's Well Check, which you should be getting on a regular basis. Now, in your 30s, that's when you need to be thinking about your first mammogram, right?
Well, if you have, especially if you have a strong family history of breast cancer, you want to get that baseline in your 30s so you know what actually normal looks like. And we're actually picking up some breast cancers earlier in that age time frame, although it's much less common than in, say, in your 40s and 50s and 60s. But you want to establish that baseline, and if you have a high risk of breast cancer in your family, definitely get them at that time earlier. And even in your 30s, you also want to start talking about, do you want to have babies? Because you start to have higher risk of birth defects and various things and genetic abnormalities after the age of 35. Mother Nature didn't intend us to have babies in our 40s and 50s, so it's really that optimum time for them to really discuss that, make sure we're getting pregnant if you want to.
An important conversation. And in your 40s, that's when you start needing to address the perimenopause issues, which affect a lot of women in their 30s.
The dreaded perimenopause. So nobody's going to escape it. So we start to have a lowering of our estrogen levels, and in particular, we see a significant drop in our testosterone. So we start seeing hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, which are all estrogen related. But more importantly, we take a plummet in our testosterone, which leads to mood disorders, so anxiety, panic, new onset panic attacks and depression, but also midsection weight gain and inability to lose weight, so that becomes a huge problem. But also our libido tanks, which is also problematic for most relationships.
Especially
so we need to start talking about that so we can start replacing it so you don't have to go through those things.
So you start talking about it then, and then it hits in your 50s, and that's when you need to start doing something about it.
Well, not necessarily hits in your 50s, because menopause, the average age of menopause is 52, but most women, we're starting to see menopause even starting to occur in our late 40s.
Really?
So perimenopause, we start to experience the problems of those deficiencies, and we want to treat them then, but menopause is the absolute failure. So the ovary said, I am done, I'm retired, Elvis has left the building. So then at that point, we start dealing with the significant issues of hormone deficiencies, which can lead to bone loss and all these, and the hot flashes, vaginal dryness, dry skin, and all the other variants.
And so you need to look at your options. You have one of those here.
Yes, so there's all kinds of options. So we have troches, which can go under the tongue, creams, gels, but what we specialize in, and I'm going to open this up, and I don't know if the camera can catch this, but it's a teeny tiny, pellet, which is actually a testosterone pellet, and we insert this under the skin in the buttock region, and it actually does a slow release over 4 months, so it's a really ideal way to release hormones.
So they're another option, and also in your 50s, you need to consider getting that colonoscopy, very important.
And actually it's not as bad as most people think these days.
Well, so I've heard. And in your 60s and 70s, because we're running out of time, you need to talk about STD testing, really important.
Yes, absolutely, because even though we can't get pregnant typically at that age group, so a lot of women and men are running off having sexual intercourse with partners thinking, well, we're not going to get pregnant, but they're getting STDs. So we really need to be addressing safe sex in that population.
Yeah, so if you're not in that population, have a conversation with your loved one who is, which I did yesterday. Thank you so much. It was an interesting conversation.
I bet it was.
We'll be right back.